Hello, and welcome to a podcast from the St. Raymond Nonnatus Foundation for Freedom, Family, and Faith. This is Dr. Ann DeSantis. I've now had my THD, so I can say that. I'm glad to be here with you for our 12-part series, 12 Ways to Heal After a Crisis. I should actually say that could be before, during, or after, but we say after. And I'm joined by my very good friend, Caroline Godin, my co-host. Caroline, before we begin, tell us a little bit about your work and ministry.
Sure. I am a mom of three, so that is my first ministry. And I'm also a catechist in my local parish. And I do a lot of Catholic writing for Epic Pew, Catholic Mom, Catholic 365, and for Catholic Stewardship.
That's right. You're doing so much. And as I always direct all of you, Caroline and I have done so many podcasts, and definitely go back and watch some of the previous episodes on 12 ways to heal after a crisis. But we also have a lot of other podcasts on our Philly Nonatus SoundCloud channel. They're audio podcasts. We have lots and lots of topics there. So please do check it out. Now, on this episode, this is episode 11 already. I can't even believe it.
Time
Our topic
flies.
on this one is going to be on spiritual direction. And some of you who are watching this podcast might say, well, I don't know much about that. I've never done it. Is it free? Well, first of all, it really depends where you go in terms of, is it free? There are some organizations that do charge for that. Um, some of them might ask you for like a suggested donation for it. But what it is, it is a time that you meet with a spiritual director, whether it be a priest or a lay person, where they guide you along your spiritual journey. And by that, I mean that involves a lot of listening and a lot of guiding about how God is speaking to you in your life. Maybe you're going through something and you need to have some guidance from a priest or someone else, someone who's trained. Now, there's also organizations that have trained spiritual directors, and that can be very important. I do have to make a little plug because what we offer is free spiritual direction with our Mercedarian friars. They're the priests that founded us, and they are masters of divinity. So I think that's just like a great thing, that they haven't specifically gone through, like some kind of training course or anything. But when you have that Masters of Divinity, certainly have a lot of training on theology, and of course, priests hear confessions, so they're really good about listening and guiding people along the ways of faith. So Caroline, let's just start with you. What is your take on, the reasons why someone might want to seek spiritual direction? Of course, our audience are those individuals and families in crisis. Like, what do you think? Why would someone want to seek that?
Yeah, spiritual direction is great, especially from, and this is important, an authoritative source, because you want to make sure you're getting it from the right place. But it's a great way to affirm your faith, first of all, but also to help you navigate. The world has so many messages, so many false messages that come through, and it's really helpful to get a little authoritative assistance to navigate all of those messages, and navigate what's going on in your heart versus what's going on in your life, what's going on in your head. So I think it could be something wonderful for anyone, but especially if you're having any doubts or any confusion in regards to your faith.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And then the other part of it is that it is confidential. Maybe some organizations even might have someone sign some kind of confidentiality, but people who reach out to us can be 100% assured. It's that it's not the seal of confession, but it is that inner forum, internal forum, I should call it. So that means that really that the priest will keep it 100% uh, privacy and confidential. So you never have to worry with us. I do have to mention for you who are watching who say, wow, I want that. I want that. Go to our website at nonatus.org and just go to the drop down that says our services, and you will see a priestly consultation. And then right next to that, you see spiritual direction. I would like to kind of differentiate those two things too. Somebody might say, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between a priestly consult and spiritual direction? Spiritual direction could be something that's more ongoing. right? So it could be something that you have a monthly appointment, like a 45-minute or an hour in-person or online appointment. So I think that's probably the main thing, is that it's more of like that commitment. Of course, at any time, if you do spiritual direction and you say, I don't think this priest or this person is for me, we're not really connecting. I don't feel that this person is really understanding me. There's never any kind of like obligation to stay with that one person. But with a priestly consult, it could be sort of a once and done. You might just have something that happened to you or to your family, and you say, I want to talk to a priest, and you might not need to have like continual. So I think that's the biggest difference. And the other thing is, with spiritual direction, it's that like listening aspect. With a priestly consult, you might be looking for a specific answer to some moral question. And you might be asking that priest something to do with a relationship or divorce or separation or some kind of trauma. And you want to know whether it's a sinful thing that's happening to your life, or do you need to go to confession? And that's what the priestly consult would help you to determine. Whereas spiritual direction, maybe right now you're not in a state of real serious sin or mortal sin, but you want to be a better person. You want to be guided along the path with the Lord. You want to get to know him better. You want to know if you're doing the right thing in terms of your ministry or your work. A spiritual direction call can help with that. Now, some priests or people might only say this has to be in person, and that's the beauty of what we do, is that we will do spiritual direction either on a cell call or even on a Zoom call, something like that. Your thoughts on people who go to confession and then after they finish at confession might say like, "Hmm, I think I do need more time with a priest." How do you think that could benefit someone? Because not only could they do the confession, right, but maybe talk a little bit more about the issue?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, going to confession alone is it's a sacrament, so it's a wonderful thing to do, and we should do that early and often, right, as Catholics. But in addition, when you go to confession, you do receive a little tidbit of spiritual direction right there, because you always get a little bit of advice or some thoughts reflected back to you. So sometimes there can be a little nugget that you get from confession that's just really valuable to you, and maybe that would spark something and say, you'd say to yourself, okay, you know what? I want to dive deeper into that. I want to learn more about that. Or I want to continue addressing this because it doesn't feel resolved yet. Because sometimes we go to confession, we confess our sins, we give them to God, and that's that. But sometimes we feel unresolved with whatever's going on, and we have more questions. So that could be a great way to introduce yourself to, hey, this is a good opportunity for me to look into spiritual direction, speaking with a priest for a longer period of time.
Yes. Oh, I agree with you. And do your homework too. I mean, I say we offer spiritual direction. And of course, all of you who are watching this are warmly invited to learn more. But there's no obligation even with us. I mean, you can certainly look online or ask your local diocese or your local parish if maybe even your parish priest could be a spiritual director to you. I think what it usually entails is someone to meet with you. Usually it's once a month. Now, of course, maybe that's too much for you or too little. If you're going through some kind of a crisis, you might need spiritual direction maybe every couple weeks or even every week. But usually I would say I've been doing spiritual direction myself. By that, I mean, I'm not a spiritual directee or director, but I've been in spiritual direction for a number of years with different, mostly priests. I did have one sister before, and we always did it once a month, and that worked out really perfectly for me. I have done it in person, and I have done it on calls. The priest that I'm working with right now, I do it on a call, and I think in today's world where everybody is so busy, sometimes that phone or the um, Zoom call or something, um, maybe not as good as in person, but it certainly is a help if you
Mm-hmm.
can't do it in person. Just say your work is too busy and maybe the priest only has available during the day or like weekdays or something like that. So you work around what works for you and for the person that you're working with. We do it for free. Now, I have worked with some organizations that they don't charge, but they do this like suggested donation. So when I was with a sister at one time, this was a number of years ago, she wanted me to, or asked that I made a donation to the religious order that she was affiliated with. So I would make any donation of my choice, whether it was 25, 50, 75, however much I wanted to donate, would have been fine for her. And she promised me that it went right into their fund. And I made the actual check to she was a Sister of Mercy. So, to the Sisters of Mercy. So, I mean, you could do the same thing. You could find a sister, find a priest, maybe your own parish priest. Sometimes all we really need is a good friend to listen. And maybe you know of a friend who is devoted to their faith. I think that's very important. We've talked about this before. Maybe we'll talk about it again, Caroline, that make sure that whoever you're speaking to is aligned with the faith, that knows the faith, not just somebody who loves you and wants you to be happy. Not to say these things are important, right? You want to be a happy person, you want to be fulfilled, but it's not just about that. It's about living out the mission that God has for your life. So why don't we talk a little bit about that, Caroline? Because I do think that we need to be careful, don't we? I mean, it can't just be somebody that, our best buddy, and they might just tell us kind of things that we want to hear. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, that's such sage advice, because so many times this world is wrapped up in, oh, it's all your perspective, and your truth is different than someone else's truth. And I'm like, truth doesn't belong to a single person. It belongs to God. There's one truth. So it's important that if we're going to receive spiritual direction, just like if we were going to receive advice, you wouldn't go to your lawn care guy and ask for advice about your car, unless you knew he was particularly good at that. But you go to the authority, right? So if we're going to receive advice, or if we're going to speak to someone about a particular issue we want them to listen to, we want to make sure that who we're speaking to is going to be the right platform. So if we want to talk about our faith, it's good to talk to a priest. That's optimal, right? Or a sister, or a very good Catholic friend, or a catechist, or someone who knows. And if you ever hear the words, well, I think, come out of their mouth, be careful. Because even as a catechist, I might say, I think, or I feel, but that's a clue to say, these are my thoughts. These are not official teachings. It was a priest that said to me, no priest should give you his opinion when it comes to the faith. It's not about their opinion. It's about the teachings. They have to, they're teaching the faith. It's about the doctrines, about the sacred tradition, sacred scripture. It's not about what they think, and of course, this was a priest who was, he was fairly traditional, but he was also very open to listening. And who's someone that I actually was interested in the things that he thought and actually his opinions. But when he actually spoke about and was teaching the faith, he did not interject with his own thoughts and opinions, because he says, I can't tell you my thoughts and opinions when I'm trying to tell you about God, because that isn't the same thing. So we keep that kind of in the back of our mind when we are seeking spiritual direction, because we want to make sure that it's authentic.
That's a good word. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. It's going to be a combination between, when you have spiritual direction, between sort of directives, like you said, sort of staying in the realm of the truth of the church. But then there's also feelings involved.
There are.
There's always feelings involved in life, where we are humans, and you might cry, or you might, feel frustrated or something. And that's, spiritual directors will tell you that those feelings are, you're allowed to have your feelings. You're allowed to experience those feelings. And, but we want to be guided by the Lord, right? And we want to be guided not just by our emotions. And a good spiritual director will help you with that. They'll help you to guide yourself through those emotions and those things. And sometimes we do need to get help from a professional. Okay. Spiritual directors are not um, therapists. Now, once in a while, you can find someone who is like a licensed clinical therapist, maybe even a doctor, maybe a master's of arts, an MA with a certification, a clinical licensed social worker or something like that too. And they can be, a spiritual director, but maybe you need both because perhaps your spiritual director doesn't have that training. So they're not going to be able to train you with if you've experienced like some real serious trauma in your life, what that affected you.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind. Now, on our website, we do have a page that has uh, actual counselors that you can make an appointment with. Now, they're not through us. We just recommend them. So you will need to use like your health insurance or, pay them outright if they don't accept insurance. We recommend them, but doesn't mean you can't look elsewhere other than us. We have a helpful resource page on our website, nonnatus.org. It's called Outside Resources. And at the bottom of that page, we have a list of um, therapists. Now, we also have some spiritual directors too. And we do have one on there that is both. She actually is a therapist and she is also a spiritual director. So you can look into that. I'm not going to name names. I'll just let you know that you can go there and look. But we're doing this podcast. We want to address this topic because a lot of people don't even know what a spiritual director is. And I sometimes do talks, especially recently, with different parish groups. And that comes up quite a bit. People will say, I don't even know what that is. I don't understand what it is. What do they do? So wanted to do this podcast to educate you on learning more because that's where you can really find help is when you learn what it is. You can even just do one session. Just say you do one session and say, you know what? It's not for me. I don't have time for this. But at least you tried it. At least you got the knowledge of what it is and how it can help you. But one of the big things that we get all the time is that people can't afford it. They can't afford $50 a session or $75. And that's a good thing. I think that we do it for free. So just keep us in mind. And we will work with your schedule too. And like I said, everything's confidential. Caroline, did you have any other thoughts on this topic before we kind of end this?
Just to say that, if you're wondering if it's something that you want to try, go for it. Give a call, reach out. There's lots of avenues out there. So yeah, give it a shot.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think just trying it out, and maybe it's not even just for you. Maybe it's for your husband or your son or daughter or your grandchild or even your parents, right? Sometimes our parents need it too. Um, but it is a good way to help people to, sometimes people feel they're being called into a ministry or something. And that's another thing that a spiritual director can help you do to determine like, okay, I'm feeling like I should do this to help others, but I don't know how to go about it. Sometimes somebody goes through some kind of trauma and after that they say, I think God wants me to help, like say divorced Catholics or something, and
Mm-hmm.
how can I make myself available to others? So pray about it. If you think that the Lord is calling you to do that, help other people, and to get some spiritual direction. Caroline, thank you so much for joining me on this program.
Yeah, as always.
Thank you. Now, this is our second to the last podcast. We have one more in this series. Caroline and I are determining what our next one is going to be on. We are thinking about parenting. So keep an eye on our YouTube channel. It's the Philly Nonnatus YouTube channel. And then, of course, I always mention that we have that Philly Nonnatus SoundCloud channel, which we have a lot of podcasts there, audio podcasts that you can check out. So we will see all of you next month. And thank you so much for joining us. God bless.
Take care.